Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Inside Today's Boardrooms from Diligent Institute, your source for the latest and greatest in corporate governance, all in 10 minutes. I'm your host, Lisa Edwards, and today I'm joined by Susan Angele, who is a senior advisor at KPMG's Board Leadership Center. Susan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lisa. It's great to be here.
So today we're going to talk about the current state of climate disclosures. And you at KPMG just published a paper on this. Tell us a little bit more about the piece that you put out.
Yeah, absolutely. The Board Leadership Center published this piece because there's just been a lot of uncertainty and confusion about where we're going with climate disclosures from a regulatory standpoint. So, just as a little bit of background, of course, the SEC climate disclosure rule is currently on hold. The SEC has stated pending the outcome of litigation, and they've indicated that once the litigation is resolved, then they'll set a new implementation date at that point. We also have the California laws, which, again, just to sort of recap, these are two separate laws. Both apply to large public and private companies doing business in California. For companies that have over $500 million in revenue, and that's not just California revenue, it's from anywhere in the world, they have to disclose risk with respect to climate-related risk. And for companies that have an excess of a billion, they also have to disclose scope 1, 2, and 3 disclosures. Now, these laws were originally intended to take effect beginning in 2026. However, the governor of California has recently indicated that he's proposing a 2-year extension. So all of that creates, just some questions. But I want to emphasize that apart from these issues, there's a good reason why we subtitled our piece, SEC Stay Shouldn't Mean Stop. And that's because there are so many inputs in pushing not regulation, but really pushing disclosure. So, first of all, the SEC still expects that companies report material risks that are climate related. They've written open comment letters about it. They continue and have indicated that they will continue to send individual comment letters to individual companies about their disclosures, and that they, potentially will enforce if they think the company's disclosures are misleading in any way or not robust. Also, investors still deeply care about these issues. They want to understand how are companies building in resilience for physical climate risk, and how are they managing their business models through the energy transition. And in fact, we saw 2 shareholder proposals on this topic that achieved a majority of votes this proxy season, indicating that disclosure is really still a big issue for investors. And then, just very quickly, 2 other reasons to touch on for companies that do business in the EU. Of course, those laws continue to be in effect. And companies are also still receiving information requests from their customers, and there's no sign of that slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, super interesting. It does still feel sort of in the consciousness. We did a global survey on ESG board oversight and strategy recently as well, and the feedback from that survey was that organizations are not moving away from their ESG goals. They may be saying them or stating them differently. They may be more cautious about sort of what they do say based on some of the various inputs. But that said, what are some of the actions that board and audit committees should be taking in this area based on some of the things that you all have seen?
So let's start with disclosure. It's really important for the board to sort of step back and just look at the disclosure holistically. So it's not just about the SEC filings. It's really about what are the sustainability reports saying? Are the marketing materials, the CEO's casual statements that are made publicly, all of those things, are they aligned? Are they consistent? Are they moving in the same direction? So that's really important to know. Another thing boards are looking at is what's the team within management? Is it cross-functional? And are they looking at the right inputs? Do they have right ways to get information? Are they looking externally? And do they have the right resources? And are they moving to continue to enhance their disclosures so that when regulations do settle, they're not caught flat-footed? And then one other thing too is I want to step back and say disclosure is one thing, but it's really all about the substance. These are huge risks to companies, plus there are huge opportunities. And so boards are and should be continuing to look at these climate related issues from a business perspective as well.
Yeah, that's a great takeaway. So I think what I heard was also just make sure that you're consistent between what your management team is saying, what you're putting in an annual report, what you're putting in a sustainability report, and what you're declaring out to the public. So I think that was where a lot of companies got a little tripped up with some of their net zero projections and things like that. So very very interesting point. As you look at it. Sort of best practices and sort of what you see when you look at it as a team and you say, wow, these people are really doing it great. What are those things that are best practices?
Sure. So a few things. One is the companies that, again, really focus on it from a business perspective are building it into strategy, building it into their ERM processes. So it's not climate off in a silo. And that couldn't be more important. So that's number one. And then as to disclosure, there's a few areas that I'll touch on. One is looking at the data gathering. What systems are in place? The best companies are building systems that actually talk to each other, because we find that a lot of companies don't have that and they have to build that. They're looking at how do we bring in the expertise to really make these assessments. So it may be bringing in new talent, or it may be renting the talent, bringing in consultants and advisors. Either way, but the best companies have their team ready and working. Another thing is they're taking an outside in view. So spending a lot of time, what is the regulatory landscape? How is it shifting? What are the tea leaves showing us? Also, what are our competitors doing? And third, what are the stakeholders expecting? What does the marketplace demand of us? Both from an investor standpoint, but also from a customer standpoint, an employee standpoint, and a community standpoint.
Yeah, I think those are all such great points. And, I think one of the things that we get asked is, all the time is sort of that question about how do you bring it all together? So that was super helpful. Any best and final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I'm just gonna, sort of start where I started. Is don't stop. Uh, Keep a high level view of this, an outside in view of this. Look at it from a business perspective, and then from a disclosure perspective, keep going to enhance those controls and processes.
Love that. So even if it's not 2026 with measurement started in 2025, it is coming. So get ready. Unfortunately, we will have to wrap it up there. Thank you, Susan, for all those recommendations. And our audience can check out that report on the KPMG Board Leadership Center site. So we will try to include it in the show notes as well. And join us next time for another episode of Inside Today's Boardrooms. Thank you for listening.